Welcome everyone to another Directions Mag Geospatial webinar, sponsored today by our friends at Rock Technologies. I'm Barbary Duke, Managing Editor here at Directions Mag with our assistant webinar producer, Lynette Qualia. If you have any questions about your connection, we'll do our best to help you. Just drop a note in the chat. Thank you very much to our geospatial community for being loyal readers for more than 20 years. Stop by directionsmag.com to get news, articles, and of course, more webinars. We are standing by to take your questions. Type those into the question box at any time during the webinar. Because we're just 20 minutes today, we will collect all of your questions and then share those with the ROC team so they can follow up with you individually after the webinar. We are recording today, so keep an eye on your inbox for more information. Snap a photo of any favorite screens with a little camera button. And we appreciate your participation on the post-webinar survey. So today we are excited to get a how-to lesson on building a case for migrating your GIS software to the cloud from our friend Alex Coleman over at Rock Technologies. We're excited to have you with us today, Alex. Welcome.
Well, we're excited to be here. Thank you so much, Barbary, and thank you for everyone out there that has attended today. Again, I'm Alex Coleman. I'm an EVP at Rock Technologies. And as Barbary stated, today we are going to walk you through how to build a solid case for moving your GIS to a managed cloud. So the first thing some of you may be asking, those of you that probably haven't seen the several webinars we've done with Directions Magazine over the last coming years, but you might be asking yourself, why Rock? And the answer is because this is truly our passion. We have been assisting organizations across numerous verticals for years, migrating their GIS to the cloud. And during that time, we found that one of the biggest challenges they all face, and when I say all of them, I'm being totally honest on that point, whether, dependent on it didn't matter the vertical, it didn't matter the size of the organization, they all faced the same challenge, and that was how to build a solid and compelling ROI case that they could present throughout their organization to get buy-in. So to help, over time, we collaborated with several of these organizations to pull together a process and a toolkit, for lack of a better term, that anyone can use to create this case for moving to the managed cloud. And today we're going to walk you through this process. So we're going to start off talking about the why. Why are so many organizations making that move? And more importantly, why will your organization benefit from the move? Then we're going to take a look at some of the main driving forces behind that migration. At that point, then we're really going to shift into building your business case, right? So we're going to talk through calculating your current on-premise costs of supporting your Esri Enterprise solution. And let me tell you, this is not just hardware. Then we're going to walk through quantifying your opportunity costs, things like downtime, slow performance, etc., and how to build a financial case for those. Then we'll walk you through how to identify what your costs will be in a managed cloud. And finally, we'll take we'll take a look at the overall comparison between on-premise and a managed cloud solution. So at the end of this presentation, you'll have walked through how to build the entire case, and you'll see some tools we've created that will be sent out to you that you can use to do this for your organization. So let's get started with the why. So obviously here, we hear, I'm sure all of you have heard about this a lot and have your own reasons. The drivers for why to move to a managed cloud are numerous. And, excuse me, and probably one of the key reasons is, in most of the organizations we talk to, it's that drive to modernize their GIS, right? The Esri Enterprise ecosystem with things like Pro, which is awesome, GeoVent Server, Insights, applications like Workforce, and that's just to name a few, can enable your organization to truly elevate what you're putting out there in terms of GIS. At the same time, all of these pieces of the enterprise can be extremely complex to manage, excuse me, and when on-premise, they can be complex to install, configure, and upgrade to stay with the times, right? So people look to a managed cloud so they can rapidly implement new services and applications to serve out to their users. They also look to the cloud to reduce costs. The cloud does really cool things, like it enables you to, only have resources on when they're needed. So, certain servers aren't running 24/7 if they're not needed. That allows organizations to really save save costs, which is a big thing. And it also allows you to scale. So as you grow and as your needs grow, your environment can grow with you in real time, rapid implementation. It's a very key piece of, innovating with GIS and staying up to date, right? And lastly, but certainly not least, there's uptime and security. Cloud environments, there's a lot of talk around this, but it is the truth that cloud environments can be built to suit any availability requirement, meaning uptime requirement, or any security requirement your organization demands. It's just a matter of partnering with the right people to architect out those solutions for your organization. So these are all reasons why we're talking about moving, right? So let's walk through a real world case where we actually partnered with an organization to build out their ROI case for moving to the cloud. For the purposes of this call, since we're going to be exposing some more private information like salaries and things like that, we're going to call this organization Cloud City. And Cloud City was about 2 years ago in the following situation. They had their Esri software on-premise. They were on ArcGIS 10.3.1. I hope that's not a lot of you out there, but it may be. So old version of Arc Server. They had no portal. They were using a file geodatabase, and they had 5 desktop editors. So no surprise, Cloud City really wanted to modernize. They thought, God, there's all of these great tools out there. We are limited. It is time to go. So their vision of modernization was going to 10.7.1. They wanted a federated portal, utilize an enterprise geodatabase, 5 pro users, which is awesome, and the ability to scale throughout time. So they said, this is currently what we want to go to, but we also want the ability to add new products as we go, right? So down the road, we might want to add things like Workforce. We're definitely looking at third-party applications. So we want an environment that can allow that to happen, right? Within a year or two. And probably equally as important, both their IT and their GIS agreed that they did not want to manage all of this in-house. So we built a case. And the case started with step 1, which is calculating your on-premise costs. A lot of this might seem pretty obvious, and it's probably the most obvious, step in the whole process for building your ROI case, right? So the first thing you're looking at is what is the size of the servers that are supporting your current environment, right? You want to get some specs on those servers, right? How many vCPUs, how much RAM, and inventory that. But equally as important, you want to think about the performance of those servers, right? How are you experiencing lag time? Are you getting that nice pinwheel in the middle of your monitor every time you try and load a new program? What about need downtime? Because all of that needs to be thought through to make sure that you are sitting on the right machines to begin with. Then you've got to ID the server requirements for the new software you want to add. So you take in that total picture, right? So your existing machines, performance improvements, or increased specs that might need to be added to those machines, and the new hardware requirements for anything that you would want to add. And once you have that in total, then you can come up with your on-premise hardware costs. So for Cloud City, it looks something like this, right? They were looking at a Dell PowerEdge rack server that was going to support their ArcGIS, their portal, their SQL data store and web servers. That was running them was going to run them about $18,000. They wanted a second server to ensure redundancy, which in the cloud is very easy to do. So they were looking at another $18,000. For their VMware, these are the hypervisors for their virtual servers, that's $1,500 a year. And then really important, remember, these folks want to use Pro, and Pro is awesome. It's also a beast when it comes to the resources it needs to perform like a dream, right? So in order to enable that great work experience, they were going to have to purchase some pretty heavy-duty workstations. So they were looking at 5 Dell OptiPlex workstations with 8 cores and 32 gigabytes of RAM. Those guys are running about $3,400, $3,500 a piece. So when they totaled out, this whole this whole requirement that they would need for on-premise hardware, they were looking at about $55,000. So that's step one. Again, that's kind of probably the easiest piece of calculating your on-premise costs for ROI. But now we move on to something that a lot of people don't consider, and it's personnel costs. So it's no joke to say that GIS today is not your father's GIS of yesteryear, right? For IT, bless you all, they are tasked with numerous duties, including purchasing, installing and configuring these servers, maintaining and troubleshooting performance issues, installing and configuring upgrades and new services, patching and security upgrades, and all of that is in addition to servicing all of the other departments and hopefully more standard software solutions that are used throughout their organization. There's a lot of time spent in this space potentially, right? And then we have our GIS administrators. Often their jobs have morphed into full-time maintenance workers, right? They're managing the enterprise configuration, they're managing portal and ensuring that's configured correctly. Let's face it, they're now DBAs, so database administrators and web server admins. This is a lot of work. And every hour spent kind of in this maintenance universe is an hour spent that's not innovating with GIS, which is really where we all want to be, right? So when Cloud City calculated the on-premise cost of the staff just to run these systems, they came up with the following. They looked, okay, our IT staff, our systems admin is spending about a third of his or her time, just in this Esri ecosystem with us, right? Trying to keep everything rolling. Well, that turned out for them to be about $33,000 a year. For the GIS administrator, that was a full-time job. Now, again, these amounts and times are going to vary, but very important to quantify, right? For this GIS administrator, their full-time job was literally keeping everything going. So that was basically $85,000 a year that they were spending just on maintaining, that Esri stack on-premise. Big costs, right? So now we're looking at a total on-premise cost. They were up to $172,672. Not cheap. So then we moved on to step two. Now, this is one of the most difficult, right? The opportunity costs. This is one of the most difficult, but at the same time, potentially the most important cost facing your organization, okay? And here's why. The first point is the cost of your GIS going down or the cost of a security breach, right? The impacts here are more than financial, and that's why they can be kind of hard to quantify. But this is where you need to sit down and consider the impact of things like, let's say your evacuation map goes down in the middle of an emergency. So we here at ROC, our HQ is in Charleston, South Carolina. We're in the Southeast, and we have seen what can happen when a hurricane's coming and an evac map goes down because the traffic's too high and the on-prem servers can't handle it. And now, the bulk of Florida can't figure out how to get out of their city. Think about fire season out west. Those evac routes are probably even more critical because they are literally dealing in minutes, not a couple hours to prepare. Those maps go down, it can be disastrous, right? And then there's the threat of security breaches. I'm sure everybody's seen in the news. I mean, there have been cities, organizations where their data's been held at ransom, and it brings them to a screeching halt, right? So quantifying these events, literally, like putting an exact dollar amount can be hard. But it's important when you're making your case that you're outlining these risks as part of the case to go to the cloud, because these are all things that can be avoided with the proper managed cloud infrastructure supporting your GIS. And they definitely have value. The next piece is stagnant technology. So this really comes down to what is the cost of staying in outdated technology, right? What's the cost of your organization not being able to take advantage of the best tools available? I mean, when we look at like the ecosystem, the Esri enterprise, and there's so much available there. I mean, you can deploy and manage your workforce efficiently. You can track resources in real time. You can provide quality services. I mean, there's just an amazing array of things you can offer, right? And all of these pieces have a cost to them for your organization. They're either the cost that they're not happening, so things aren't moving along as efficiently as they should, or there's the opportunity that you can gain from having all of this innovation in place. So again, It might be harder to add an actual dollar value to that, but those are things that you should consider and bullet out when you're making this case to move to a managed cloud. And then the last piece, and this is actually probably the most easiest to quantify, and it's what Cloud City and a lot of the organizations we work with do focus on. And this is the opportunity for better performance and increased productivity. So here we're talking about things like the ability to collaborate in real time with your coworkers because everything's in the cloud and you're accessing your data in real time. It's, having an environment that works quickly so you don't have that lag time when you're sitting at your desk and the wheel's spinning and you're waiting 10 minutes for something to load, right? So you can get to work. And this is actually really easy to quantify. And this is how we did it with Cloud City. So they basically looked at, okay, in terms of if they were able to collaborate in real time with everyone, and everyone's working with, excuse me, the same data, what would that save them? How many hours a week would that save each employee? And they came up with a minimum of about 5 hours a week, right? So if you take that math, they basically then said, okay, we're going to take the average salary of the folks, the 5 employees that will be collaborating this effort, excuse me, and we're going to break that down for what we pay them per hour. So they figured that each employee was making $24 an hour, right? So then you take that $24 an hour times 5 hours per week, you get $120 per employee, and then you multiply that by 5 and you annualize it. So they're looking at basically an annual cost of cost or savings, depending on how you want to look at it, of $31,200 for being able to collaborate in real time. Better performance. So again, they looked at how long are we spending staring at the wheel or restarting a service because it went down, right? And they, again, came up with their average of 1.5 hours a week. And so their overall annual costs there were $9,360. So the important thing to know is that, and why this is so important, frankly, is that we have worked with a lot of organizations on this. I have personally seen this cost analysis go up to over $300,000 a year. So depending on how your organization is set up, depending on how many people you might have working remotely, et cetera. I mean, there are a lot of variables here. This can be a huge number. And it's extremely important to think about this when you're talking about moving to the cloud, because that's the whole point is that you'll have better performance, you'll be able to use up-to-date software, you'll all be in sync, and it'll move fast for you. So you're going to get more done. So this is a really, really good, strong piece of the puzzle when you're making this argument to move to the cloud. So now let's take a look at costing out your managed cloud. All right, so identify your managed cloud costs. What do you need to know? It's not a lot different than what you would need to know if you were doing something on premise, right? You're going to look at your infrastructure requirements for the software, number of users and editors, number of map services and the size of your database that you're going to be working with. And do you really want to take all of that, especially, for example, your map services to this new cloud environment? Any security policies or backup and retention policies you have. If you can organize and get all of that data together, ideal world, you've got someone there at your organization that can then price out a cloud environment to support these services. If not, there are a lot of great resources for you to use. Esri has a super team that can scope out these environments. We do it at Rock. There are other partners that do it. But if you don't have someone on premise, or if you don't have someone at your organization that can help you with these costs, reach out. The Esri partner universe is vast, and we'll hook you up with the right people to get you those prices. For our Cloud City folks, when they priced out their managed cloud solution, it came out to about $4,350 a month. That included all of their infrastructure. It included all of the services to manage their software and the infrastructure itself. And it included 5 GPU-enabled Pro workstations. That means that they can sit on their nice, lean little laptops and run Pro like a dream because they're leveraging the power of the cloud to make that happen. Then they had a fee for architecting, installing, configuring this enterprise system in their new cloud environment. So they looked at a total year one cost of $71,700 and a year two cost of $52,200. So let's compare this to on-prem. So here we go. Obviously, I know we've seen all the costs add up as we've been going, so it's no surprise there's a big difference here. But some people might say, well, hold on, the hardware costs are only that once, right? And then you've got a good 3 years to go. And that's true. However, there's some things to consider. One is even without the hardware, the initial hardware spend, managed cloud still from a cost perspective is beating out on-prem costs 9 times out of 10. The other piece that you really have to think about is if you're buying all of your hardware, say in 2020, what happens in 2023? Have you been stagnant for 2 years because you haven't been able to upgrade anymore because you can't buy any new servers? You know, like are you, either way, 3 years, there's going to be another hardware spend. Excuse me. The other piece is, and again, that's why it's so important, is that personnel and opportunity costs. Those can't be undervalued and are a huge part of any, of any case that you would make to go to the cloud. So what we are going to arm you with and what you'll receive after this webinar is, as part of the presentation at the end, you can see that there are, blank areas for you to collect and enter in your own information, both, in the kind of brief overview format you see here and in the 3-year space. So you can utilize those. We've also included a list of resources if you want to explore them to try and get some pricing on your own for sure. So for example, a link to where you can get the hardware requirements for a lot of the top Esri offerings, where you can see some of the main patches and alerts that come down from Esri thinking about maintenance. We have the AWS pricing calculator and the Azure pricing calculator if someone wanted to kind of scope out some machines. And most importantly, or equally as important, if you ever have any questions or, if you really want to consider this and want to talk through it, that's what we're here for. It's what we do. You can contact us anytime. And we just really are excited to see more folks in the cloud and more folks taking advantage of all the awesome things that can be done with the Esri Enterprise. So thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Alex. We sure do appreciate you sharing all these great tips. And folks, as you know, they will give you some extra little tools and resources that you can follow up with. So keep an eye on your inbox, please. We will send you a link to the recording as well as the resources that she mentioned. Also, some attendance certificates are available if that is of interest to you. We appreciate your opinions on the survey on the way out. Thank you again to Alex for sharing her expertise, and we hope that you will join us for more geospatial webinars. Have a great day and tell a friend about Rock and Directions Mag.